Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome. I can see that the sun's been out more today than it was last week. We've had a little bit more sunshine, which is always nice this time of year. James is going to do a short presentation of 20 to 30 minutes. And then after that, we will have a Q&A session. The presentation is actually going to be recorded, and then the Q&A that we have will not be, so everybody chat as they require. While James is talking, let's please keep the microphones off. And as always, I will let James introduce himself. So thank you very much, James.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm James Butterworth. I'm a new entrant farmer, grower. I spent the best part of a decade pursuing a career in academia, and fell out of love with it, which some of you might be in that position too. I don't know. And anyway, yeah, made the jump and set up a market garden. So yeah, today I'm just going to give you a kind of overview of it. There'll be lots of different bits of information, some of which will be useful, interesting to some of you, and other bits to other folk. So let's see if I can get this moving. Right. So yeah, in 2019, sort of 2019-2020, I set up Cotswold Market Garden as a partnership between myself and two tenant farmers, Jonty and Brunyee of Conygree farm, which is probably about 20 minutes north of Cirencester. Some of you may know Jonty and Mel, particularly Jonty from his time working at Cirencester. So yeah, they've been at Conygree farm for, well, so I think since 2004. So it's, you know, it's an established organic mixed farm, about 73 acres. And we are currently growing into the 2.5 acre site dedicated to the market garden that we're building there. So it's certified organic. We are no-till or no-dig, depending on your terminology, and that's for practical as well as ecological reasons. For practical reasons, we're on Cotswold brash soil, which, if you're not familiar with it, is basically stone on top of bedrock, with a little bit of clay and a little bit of loam. But yeah, not much soil. So tilling that for vegetable production would certainly bring a lot of challenges with moisture, and you know, when you don't have much soil, you probably don't want to be tilling it very often. So those are the practical reasons, and then the ecological reasons often talked about with no-till. Maintains a fabulous soil structure. The kind of aggregates we get on the no-till horticultural soil is incredible, and it's fantastic for moisture retention. So, you know, we probably have to water less than we would do if we were tilling, but at the same time it drains really, really well because the soil structure is so good. So our mission really as a business, we're 2 years in. There's a few things that we're aiming to do. So one is to grow produce that is unbeatable in its freshness and quality. Being small scale is, you know, those are the kind of things you can outcompete supermarkets and wholesalers on. So number two, to show how small scale organic horticulture can help build a truly local food system. I get so worked up by the amount of produce that is assumed to be local, and the kind of produce you get in so many farm shops, and I just know that it's from the other side of the world, or it's not local. And but people often think it is local, and it's staggering how little local produce there is in the Cotswolds in terms of vegetables. And there's no reason why places can't be selling very, very local produce if we can get more small scale organic horticulture going and building up that food system. So we're also trying to focus on soil health and biodiversity as a means to both economic and ecological sustainability. So it's not just about the environment, but soil health and biodiversity are kind of the backbone to the profitability and longevity of the business as well. And ultimately, I left a relatively well-paid salary, to set up a business with all the risks that come with that. And my aim from the beginning has been to get to a stage where I can enjoy a good, sustainable income from the business. Not entirely there yet, but I'm very confident that we will be soon. So this is an aerial shot of the gardens, which is pretty up to date. So I think from Google Earth, taken in the summer. You can see we've got some polytunnels, some outdoor space, newly planted half acre of woodland shelter belt around the edge, you can see. So the whole field is just over a hectare, but so yeah, 2.5 acres. Some photos of the produce over the last couple of years. It's quite an easy business for doing social media. It's the colourful vegetables sell themselves, really. So yeah, I said I'm a new entrant and working in partnership with Jonty and Mel Brunyee at Conygree farm, and it was never on my radar to work as a partnership. I was sort of scouting around just for land to rent, but it quickly became obvious that that Jonty and Mel from the farm probably wanted some skin in the game as well to sort of make it worth their while. And I've since become absolutely evangelical about partnerships. I've spoken to probably a dozen people in sort of similar situations who are sort of trying to set up their own thing or looking for land, and I've said to all of them, if you can find a way of working in partnership, the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. So as a new entrant, particularly, access to land is very difficult. So working with an established farm has facilitated the establishment of this business. Vegetable production requires relatively small amounts of land to generate relatively large amounts of sales, as I'll come on to. So I've been very aware as well that working in partnership, you combine your strengths, and at the same time that acts as a sort of buffer for weaknesses. So different people will bring different things to the partnership, and it's very much greater than the sum of its parts. So I am the sort of lead. I lead on all the sort of day-to-day running of the business. So I'm bringing time and energy, motivation, certainly bandwidth, and I'm bringing the horticultural skills. Jonty and Mel are bringing a huge amount of experience, a huge network, customer base from their existing operations, They've individually got their own strengths, which, you know, a huge value to the business savvy, just you know, strategic thinking, problem solving, and just having that level of support between, you know, different people invested in the business. It's been fantastic for my morale. I think it would have been a lot more challenging if I'd just been out on my own. I like to be quite honest about numbers, because I think it's vitally important if anyone getting into this kind of thing knows what's required, but also knows what's possible. And it can be a very, very opaque business. We've set this up with startup costs of around £30,000. You could do it for a fair bit less. You could, you know, cut out a number of these things. You could grow slower, but, you know, I was quite keen just to get the business to sort of full scale as quickly as possible, and generating income and getting closer to that stage where I can have a sustainable income. So these are many of the things that we've spent money on in the startup phase. So it's a very intensive model of production horticulture, and I just thought it was useful to talk a little bit about the limiting factors. There's a very interesting balance, I find, between time and space. So, for example, we're just over 1 hectare of land in total, but probably only just over an acre of that will be in production. So there's a lot of areas for woodland, sort of tracks, service areas, space for sheds and all those kind of things. So compared to sort of your normal field scale vegetable production, we have very, very, very little space. So we have to maximize what we can get out of that space in terms of yield and revenue. So that means that we have to invest probably a lot more labor than would typically be the case for field scale vegetable production. I tried to quickly look up some numbers, but I couldn't find what I was looking for. But I could easily imagine that field scale vegetable production, you might be looking at 1 employee, 1 full-time worker per several acres, if not a lot more than that. And we're looking at something like, at full scale, well, probably about 1 full-time worker per half an acre, if not less land than that. So we're really investing time and labor into our small space to get the most out of it. So that means we can get yields way beyond what you would expect in field scale vegetable production. So in our outdoor space, we're sort of averaging roughly £15 a metre square over the course of a year, and in the polytunnels, averaging about £42 a square metre. So they're fairly good. I'm pretty happy with those yields, and I think we can improve on them a lot further. So what that works out as, so last year was our first growing year. We grew on 0.2 acres, 0.1 acres in polytunnels, and we grossed £29,000 in vegetable sales. This year, just coming to the end, we've been growing on about half an acre outdoors, and again, about 0.1 acres in the polytunnels, and generated £42,000 of sales this year. So that's equivalent to £69,000 an acre, or £170,000 a hectare. And the figure I had in my head was £285 a hectare as that average income for farmland in England. So, you know, it's very intensive. and the yields per square meter are, almost incomparable. So where do we want to be? The aim at sort of full scale in year 5 is to grow on our full 1.1 acres outdoors and what will hopefully be a 1/4 acres of polytunnels. And I'm fairly confident that we'd be able to gross about 100,000 sales on that in due course. Now, the backbone of our business, we grow over 50 types of vegetables and about 200 different varieties, but the backbone is very much mixed leaf salad, which we sell retail, wholesale, bulk, and that's about 30% of our turnover. So this year we've sold about 1 metric ton of mixed leaf salad. We grow it all year round. It's got very high yield per metre square, but it's also got you can harvest it very quickly compared to, say, carrots or parsnips. You could probably harvest at least 100 pounds of product in an hour, if not more. And it very much outcompetes with supermarkets, wholesalers, any other mixed leaf salad around, for freshness, for taste, for interest. There's leaves in our salad that you will never find unless you go to another very small scale market garden. And we can grow it year round. So, even now in the depths of winter, we're selling 15 kilos a week of mixed leaf salad, grown in the heart of the Cotswolds. So there's 15 to 20 different types of leaves in our mix, and that changes through the seasons. So there's a lot more lettuce in summer, and then in autumn and winter, we've got lots of interesting oriental leaves, and other very interesting novel leaves that you probably won't come across elsewhere, but love growing in polytunnels over winter. And this means we can adapt what's in the mix every time we harvest based on what's available, so we can maximize yields by looking at how crops are performing. And that diversity and flexibility really helps us spread risk. So we've got one product, on the fresh sheet that we send out to our wholesale customers. It just says mixed leaf salad. They don't know what's going to be in that. Could be a different combination of things. So it's very simple in some respects. And we find I call it the gateway drug, basically, because people who aren't used to buying really fresh, local, seasonal, organic vegetables try the salad, and they've not tried anything like that before, because it's so different to what you can get in the supermarket, and it opens their eyes as to what else is possible. Here are just a few pictures so here's some salad growing in the summer. So the pictures up close. And that's our bags that we sell to local shops, with our own label on it. Just wanted to talk a little bit about sales and marketing and how vital that is for a small scale business. And I always say to people, if you're going to make it work, you've got to know where, when, and how you're going to sell everything you plant. Because if you don't, you probably, there's a good chance you won't find a market for it. And then you've invested a lot of labor and resources, and you've got nothing to show for it. And you really have to maximize everything on this sort of scale, and you've got to try and sell almost everything. And that's, if you do, that's one of the reasons why it can work. We've got a real diversity of products. So like I said, we grow about over 50 types of vegetables, probably more than 200 varieties. And we try to have a really quite diverse set of market streams, so retail and wholesale. We currently supply around about 50 veg boxes, which are delivered within 10 miles of the farm. The plan is for that to go up to getting on for 100, possibly 100 at full scale. And we do that year round, well, weekly between May and December, and then we go weekly January to April when produce is less abundant. We supply about 6 different farm shops and delis, and we're able to sell, we sell a smaller selection of vegetables that are more high value, basically. But there's regular orders, decent quantities, and we try and make sure that no wholesale account is no more than about 15% of turnover. So, you know, if they decide that they're no longer going to buy from us, or they shut up shop, then, you know, we can replace that income without too much trouble. We also supply one restaurant, which is probably one of our biggest wholesale accounts, and that's fantastic for selling stuff in bulk, you know. So an order could easily be 20-30 kilos of spinach a week in for a lot of the year. And, you know, there's quite good margins when you're harvesting that kind of amount and just shoving it into one huge big bag and delivering it, rather than dividing it up into small retail packages and so on. So we hope to grow, take on more restaurant customers in the future, because we really like working with this one in particular. Although it's very easy to grow produce in the summer, it's actually much easier to sell it in the winter. People are not growing their own, they're not going on holiday. So there's a careful balance to be struck between growing things, high value things in the summer, but also growing things when people want to buy vegetables, which is actually predominantly the winter. So just to finish off, I just tried to think of a few tips for success of the many that I could probably come up with, and the ones that have been really important for me. So number one is know your goals and focus on those goals ruthlessly. And it was a piece of advice I got from a podcast. I can't exactly remember which one, but it was a farming podcast. And the advice was that really in year one of a startup business, you shouldn't have any other goal other than to get to year 2. That should be your only goal. And so I've taken that on board, and that's been very important for me. So getting to year 2, and this year it's been very much getting to year 3. I feel like we're starting to get to the stage where we can actually think about other goals. But yeah, ruthlessly focusing on maximizing income and revenue, because ultimately that's what you need. You need a really strong start with a business like this, otherwise you could easily just fold and fail, and many similar projects have. I think another piece of advice would be to visit as many similar enterprises as possible. Market gardening is an incredibly complex and complicated operation. No day is the same, and you've got so many different systems, so many different tasks, so much complexity in terms of the number of vegetables you're growing. Your crop planning is incredibly complicated, produces spreadsheets, that probably similar in complexity to multi-million-pound businesses, and you learn a lot of that by doing. But because there's not a university where you go and learn how to do market gardening, so you've got to visit other small-scale producers, and there's so much invention and creativity in the sector, and there's so much peer-to-peer sharing. So visiting as many similar enterprises as possible, I would say, is absolutely crucial. And then the final piece of advice is, well, it works for me. Don't work weekends, and if that's not possible, then at least make time for yourself and take time off, whether it's with family or whatever. Having really clear boundaries between work and not work is very, very important to me, at least. And market gardening, growing, farming is a business that could take every waking second of your life, and it will, unless you don't let it. But it makes you more productive, I think, if you are very strong and strict on those things. Anyway, so that's me. I'll finish there, and we can open up for any questions.